Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Thank you for joining. This has been a long time coming. As you can see, it is the void effect from Thunderbolts, which is a few months old at this point. I'm very late to this, but I'm very happy with the final result, so let's just jump straight into it. Alright, so as you can see, this is a pretty decently large comp. There's a lot going on, mainly because everybody was green screen and comped in, and the background was also just like a PNG that had a lot of treatments and stuff. But you know, there's a lot going on, sure, but it is, in essence and like in the concept of everything, it's very simple. So let's just go through the plates that we had first. Okay, so we started with this one, which is obviously the girl in the foreground, and then we have this man here, which was the subject I decided to turn into the void. And then we have the background here. So all three of these are from Action VFX. I'll link to this exact pack down below, so if you want to follow along with that, feel free to do so. I think Action VFX has put out some pretty good stuff in terms of plates, and this one, although it wasn't intended to be for the void effect, it's intended to be an electricity sort of effect, which is why we have this lighting here. It matched what I wanted from the shot, not one-to-one, but saved me going out and shooting my own stuff. So thank you, Action VFX. I'll link to that in the description. We've got all of our keys here. I have two for the void key because I actually switched that up after a couple of revisions, because I was like, this isn't really working, and I will show off those differences. And just a warning, this video is probably going to be pretty in-depth because it is a pretty in-depth comp, and although I didn't work on Thunderbolts directly, I do have friends that did work on Thunderbolts, and I consulted them during the creation of this. So this is as close to the exact sort of formula that they used as you can get. Obviously, like I said, it's not direct, it's not first hand, but it's using the same sort of process and the same sort of formula. So this is a pretty standard IBK key here. We did a couple methods. So as you can see, we got the key light, the IBK color, and the IBK gizmo. That's a very standard setup. But then with the void key, I needed to be a little bit more precise because we're able to get a very good key of her. But for the void plate, as you can see, there's lots of shadows. He's actually making contact with the green screen, and lots of intricate details, in between his fingers, these little holes here, and it was just causing us some issues. So I had to switch to the Primat method, which is basically the same as the key light. I still used that for the core key, but using Primat was just able to get us a little bit better of a result, so that when we went through and did the IBK, it was just worked a little bit better. This here, because it was giving me so many issues because it's not the best green screen, there's a lot of patches here. There's grades, there's more grades, there's erodes. It was very dirty. There's a lot of roto patches here. It was a very dirty keying setup. So I don't want to use this as an example because this shouldn't be how you're doing your keys. I just had to do this to get the best result. So then here we have the void tracks. Now this is because, as you can see, stabilization, the camera actually moves. As you can see, it's very subtle. It's such a small thing, you can barely even see it at this view, but there was a slight camera move. So I just made a stabilization for that. Plug that in down below. And then we have the eye tracks, which is for the sort of eye reflection effect that the void has. This ended up being not actually as noticeable as I would have liked. I really wanted to emphasize that look because that's kind of really what sold it for me when I was watching the movie, is just seeing those reflections in his eyes. It just added to that creepiness factor, and so I really wanted that, but unfortunately it's not really super noticeable, and that's just a side effect of the type of shot this is. This is very far away, and just like it is in the movie, when the void is far away, you can't see the eyes. It's just not possible to make it look good with being so far away. So that's very unfortunate, but I still did it anyway, so that if you're recreating this with your own footage, it will still show up, and you should have good results, but it just wasn't too noticeable in the final product. And then we had tracks for the girl as well, which was just a, stabilized, just like the Void track was. Again, there was just the tiniest bit of camera shake. This one's more understandable because she was like banging on the ground right next to the camera. That's going to introduce shake. So that's all the prep done. That's our keys, that's our tracks. That's usually what I do first. Not for the bash comp. For the bash comp, I always just do like a key light, just do a really crappy key. But when I actually get into the final comp stage, I always do all my prep first. So yeah, my tracks, my keys, all that sort of stuff, just to make sure that the rest of the process is going to be creative. And then when I've locked that creative stuff, I can go back and I have this solid foundation to work on, and I'm not kind of working backwards. Let's get into the background and how I treated that. It's this one and then this one, and I just have them mixed like this. You can barely see anything. So all I did with this was I used this to kind of overlay with this plate here, if we bring this up. So as you can see, it's just darkening that a little bit. And then we have another key mix with a third plate. Now this plate here is just brightening up this ground. So if we turn the exposure up, as you can see, it's just brightening up that ground. This is, technically accurate because that's the plate that was shot. But this looks more accurate because it looks like, it's coming down here, the light is hitting the ground. And it also made the plate of the girl fit in a little bit nicer. She looked a little bit, cut out, for lack of a better word. And once we've got the color space, as you can see, if we just, there you go. It's not as drastic as it looked before. Same with this, but there you go. Then we have the emergency light, which, as you probably guessed, this being a PNG, is not moving. It's just a still image. So I introduced the emergency light, and basically what I did with that was introduce this, going in and out. As you can see, if we go through. Now the reason I did this was just to kind of add life to an otherwise lifeless environment. There's no people in it. It is a still image. There's not even any noise, digital noise. There's no banding on anything. There's nothing to actually indicate that this is a moving image. And all that sort of stuff, people say, oh, you don't want any noise on anything. You don't want any, And while it's true, okay, you may not want digital noise to be super prominent in your footage because it looks ugly as hell. You do need that stuff, at least a little bit, to kind of stop it feeling like a PNG, This is a very drastic measure of that. But it also adds to the scene, this is a lab, the intention was anyway, that this is a lab where the Void was being held, or, Bob, or whatever this character's name is. And, they were being held here, the Void got released, and then now everything's going crazy, that's why there's the alarm sound effect in the final thing. We've got this light here. It's just kind of setting the scene, making the world feel lived in, just really adding to it overall. And then next we have the Void Splat, which is just this sort of shadow down here. It's not great, don't get me wrong. I know this is super janky, but it didn't need to be super fantastic, Corner pinning it to where it needs to be. And as you can see, this is why I didn't really care how good it looked. I just wanted those shapes to come through, the gradients and the general sort of you can kind of tell that's probably a body. And then this dissolve, if we enable links, it's just linked to this grade. This kind of drives all of the emergency lighting. So I just link that value to dissolves and stuff throughout the whole comp to kind of introduce that lighting and make it feel more set into the world. And then next we have Void himself. So this is where majority of the effect is. Everything else is just roto shapes, constants, grades. To be honest, this could have been a constant with some manual roto shapes to bring back some features. Trying to use an actual plate for this actually proved to be more difficult. If you're wondering why everything has this green tinge to it, by the way, I'm using the viewer input to use the LUT that I made. So if we have a look without it, so this is the final shot with the LUT, and this is without it. So that's why that's happening. So let's just go over the kill spill real quick. So obviously I'll go over this in a dedicated keying video if I ever actually make one, but you never just want to key the plate straight away. You want to have your matte separate, and then you want to copy that in to a despilled plate. so that you're not messing with the colors and you can have a lot more control. Now what I like to use is kill spill. You can do it with like manual grades and stuff like that. I noticed this just works the best. So I have this kill spill here, which is just getting rid of the green overall. So this was the main kill spill here. As you can see, it's the main pipe, but in one of the revisions, I sent this to a few of my other compositor friends, and one thing I got back was the boots were standing out, you know, because they're much brighter than everything else, they're much more saturated than everything else. So I just did this kill spill just to remove everything. I was like, screw it, he's meant to be just like complete black anyway, really. We don't want his boots to be distracting at all. And then I just did this with the key mix. So the reason we want to be kill spilling first is because if we just did the regular key matte, as you can see, we get all these, you know, stupid edges that, you know, they just don't look good. It's obvious that it's a green screen and it's bad. If we just chuck a quick pre-malt here, when we do it on kill spilled plate, as you can see, there's just nothing like that here. But if we get rid of this kill spill, as you can see, the green starts coming back. And then if we look at his boots, you know, if we get rid of this key mix and then get rid of the kill spill, there's a lot of green that comes back here. So you want to be doing it on already de-spilled plates so that we don't get those annoying edges. And to be honest, keyers, they don't handle de-spill very well. They handle keying very well because that's what they're meant to do. But their primary goal isn't to de-spill your plate, so, you know, they're obviously not going to be good at that. As you can see, it got a lot more complicated. It's just a bunch of grades and stuff, but this was the original silhouette sort of effect for the void, and then it turned into this. It looks more complicated than it actually is. We have stuff shoved to the side, old versions. This is very messy. This was quite a few revisions in, as you can see. I think right now we're at version 7 of this shot, I believe. So, you know, it was a few versions of going back and forth. And these here, these little setups here, we got one here and one here. Those are for the emergency lighting. So it's not as complicated as it looks. It's just very messy, and I haven't maintained this very well. So I'll just skip to the end of this little section, because as you can see, it's like entirely black. If we up the exposure, we do have these details coming through, and that was by request. You know, if we get rid of that, as you can see, there's nothing. These look crazy drastic, but if we go full screen, you can barely see them. You know, they're barely visible, but that was the intention. That was one of the notes that I got when I sent this around to get sort of feedback on it, was, you know, it needs to be visible, but only just. Like, you want to feel it more than you actually see it. And then, of course, we have the red lighting. So that's sort of our main silhouette and our main sort of details, I guess. But then we also have this, which is super simple. It's just an invert blur sort of reveal situation. And this was just added to just add the tiniest amount of detail to the edge. So this is what it looks like. This is kind of our final look. It looks a bit janky when you expose up, obviously, as most things do. And then we have the eyes. Now, when we're exposed up, they're super obvious, but as you can see, when we're exposed down, they are super subtle. Still very obvious, like, in this sort of sense. But even when you go full screen, like, I've lost them. I've actually lost them. Oh, there they are. I wish it wasn't this subtle, but that's purely just because of the setup that we have. And as you can see, like, this taking up nearly his whole eye. And it's to the point where, like, these are individual pixels. Like, that's how sort of small we're getting. And this is 2K footage. It's not like this is 1080. Like, we're pretty far in. These are individual pixels. Like, yeah, it's just unfortunate. As you can see here, because it's so small, it's just not really, I don't know, it's looking very flickery, it's looking very pixelated, so I just added some frame blending here. This is, like, drastic. It makes it look like he has light trails in his eyes, but again, when we dumb it down to this level, it looks, you know, a lot better. It just kind of stops it from being a bit too clamped. So it was just, yeah, a little quick fix. So here we are. We have the void over the background. That is surprisingly like half the effect done, because after this, it's just some small treatment stuff, getting the girl in there, and obviously doing her disappearance, and then some lens stuff at the end. So I'll try and rush past the rest of this, because obviously the void is the main part of it. Now this transform here is to mimic the stretching that happens with anamorphic lenses. So it's stretched out horizontally, ever so slightly. I believe it's 1.02, yeah. And then if we have a look at it, as you can see, over a certain amount of frames, it stretches back to this. So now you could just do regular defocus, but I wanted to get a little bit of that depth. So I have this map right here, map in quotation marks. It's quite simply just a square, square roto shape. But then it's blurred, and I'm using that as the map for the eye defocus. And what that is doing is, if we have a look here, it's making, like, if we get rid of this blur, we'll probably see it much better. Yeah, so as you can see, the eye defocus, it blurs where there's an alpha being put into the map, and it doesn't blur where there isn't. So if we get this blur back in, it looks a bit more natural. And what that's meant to replicate is, the lady's in focus here. So obviously, she's lining up with this. This will be more in focus than the background. And I wanted to push the defocus pretty heavily. So I wanted to make it obvious that they were doing a rack focus. And so that's just to give a little bit more of that definition. And then when we turn that off, everything's just in focus, which realistically, this would probably start to soften a little bit, but you don't notice enough because your focus is here now. It's not around these edges. So I felt comfortable getting away with that. And for the actual shape of the defocus, I used magic defocus here. I'm doubling up on defocuses. But the reason I did that is because this magic defocus, you can preview it and customize it the way you want it to, so you can match your lens. Now, usually I would just use that as an overall thing, but I wanted this specifically for that eye defocus reason. So I kind of just did what I would usually do here, but use that as a plugin for another node sort of thing. So I just made it look how I wanted it to, and then plugged it in, so we're good to go. Next we have the Void Splat Flash. It's just like a quick double flash. And what that is if you have a look in the trailer, when he actually, splats somebody, there's like a very subtle flash. This, you could go either way. It's not like super necessary, but I just wanted to recreate it as faithfully as I could. I personally don't really like it. I kind of like the idea of them just disappearing. But again, this was a recreation. This wasn't my original sort of idea. So I decided to include that. But usually I probably wouldn't have included this, but it's there. And then finally we have the lady. This kill spill is much, much more in depth. Basically I just wanted to get rid of all the green and all the blue because she's wearing black jeans, she's wearing a black shirt, or grey I should say. The only issue is her hair has a lot of colour in it, but I thought, look, I just want to get rid of the spill and I want to get rid of this light. This was the easiest way to do that. So if we disable that, as you can see, we're still keeping the color. We're just getting rid of all that blue spill. So that's really what we want. We kept most of her hair color, like most of that was untouched. We just got rid of the green in there. But this got hit quite a bit. So this kill spill here was just to preserve the saturation in her hair, because as you can see, it was going like basically white. But here we get a lot more of that color back in, which we wanted. And then this kill spill here is just to restore this properly. So this is what it looks like. As you can see, once we got rid of everything, like we got rid of the blue in the main section, then once we got rid of everything else, it was just patching that hair. So we got this saturation coming back here, so it looked like her hair was fuller, and she didn't have like a rim light on her or anything. And then we have this, which is just patching here, just to kind of make it blend a little bit better. And then we have the actual void splat itself. Bam, 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 bam. 3 frames. Is it the best animation I've ever done? Definitely not. But it looks good in motion, and that's kind of all you need. And that's really simply, it's the girl matte, frame held to a certain frame. Then we got the blur, transform, then we have a stencil, just to kind of keep it in line with the thing. And then we have a switch, just goes to a regular roto shape. Because I wanted the first frame to be sort of like, how do I explain it? I wanted the first frame to feel like she was being blasted with this really big light and there was a shadow falling behind her that you could visibly see because there was that much light. And then we have the same setup with the same sort of shape. It's all exactly the same as before, just in reverse. She's going out of focus instead of going into focus. So this is everything put in. This is Void, the Void Splat, the Lady, the Emergency Light. You know, we have a complete scene here, but we don't have a complete shot. And that is where we get into what I think is the more fun stuff in compositing. This is the stuff where I thrive. I'm just like, yeah, I love doing this. This is awesome. And that's lensing and, you know, just general supplementary effects. There isn't a huge amount on this. There's nowhere near the amount I do on, say, Digital Circus, for example, but that's animation. That's super stylized. This, I have to keep a bit more grounded and realistic. You know, we can't really be having it. We can't really be having crazy amounts of lens dirt and lens flares because you see it a lot in like fan films, for example, or people that are really new to compositing or VFX in general. They'll shove a bunch of lens flares in. They'll shove a bunch of, you know, glow or light leaks or something like that to try and hide parts of their work, even though by doing that it's kind of contradictory because it actually makes it look worse. You know, you need to keep things realistic and match references. It's not just about what you think looks good, and that's what I had to do here. I had to show a lot of restraint. This was more camera shake, as you can see, disabled it. It was too much. And then we have my chromatic aberration node, which fixes the bounding box firstly, but it also just adds some really nice chromatic aberration. Now, chromatic aberration is one of the lens effects I love most. It's just, I don't know, something about it. Something about it really tickles my pickle. No, I can't say that. And then we have a simple grain setup, which is making a grainy plate. If we boost this up a lot, but then when we key mix it, we have it using this. You want to luma key your shot, but invert it. So as you can see, it's inverted here, so that the darker parts of the shot are the parts that are left with an alpha. And then you want to just do an overall grain over your entire shot and then key mix it in using the luma keyed shot. Now the reason you want to do this is because grain is a result of like the absence of light. So it's only going to show up in the darker parts of your image. It's not going to show up in like a really bright highlight, you know, and that's just going to be really weird looking and it's going to be distracting to the audience. So for a more realistic approach, you want to, like I said, key the darker parts and use that to key mix a grain plate back in. When you see everything in motion, you know, you see a lot of the things that I was talking about, the stretching of the defocus when you know, the rack focus happens. It's a very subtle thing that kind of just makes it feel a little bit more realistic. I didn't add any lens distortion because there is already someone here. So I left that. I didn't want to mess around with that and like double distort it or anything. This light here, as you can see, and then, you know, the subtle movements of Void. As you can see, he's moving around here and there. But there we are. That is how I recreated the Void effect from Thunderbolts. One of my messiest scripts, sure, but I think the end result speaks for itself. I'm really happy with it. There's improvements I could have made, 100%. But at the end of the day, this is just a fun little personal project. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something. And if you want to recreate this, like I said, I'll link the Action VFX plates down below. Let me know if you do recreate it. And let me know in the comment section any sort of suggestions you have for other effects you want me to recreate from movies. But without further ado, I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.